Hey everyone, Skippy The Loremaster here. Welcome to my channel, and today I'm going to be telling you why this year, 2021, is the single best year for Lord of the Rings lovers or Middle-earth, or even more broadly speaking, Tolkien works. Than honestly, even since The Hobbit, and maybe even since Lord of the Rings came out in the early 2000s. And I'm going to be giving you 5 distinct reasons, 5 distinct projects going on, and trends and different things like that, that are truly, uplifting, to be a Tolkien fan. And if you have a love for Tolkien's work, and I'm not just referring to obviously John, who was a genius with the things that he made in the visionary, but also his son Christopher Tolkien, who I also have a high adoration for. The one who took all of the works that were unfinished and edited them and put them together. That takes lots of skill, and people don't have as much appreciation, because whenever I say I'm a Tolkien fan, I mean not just John, because you gotta love him too, but J.R.R. Tolkien, but also obviously Christopher Tolkien, and I think that should be duly noted. But as for the 5 projects that I'm talking about, there are 5 different projects, mostly by different companies. Okay, and so for the most interesting one, number one is the Amazon-led TV series, which is slated to sound pretty interesting. So first off, I must add that they said that it's going to be taking place sometime in the Second Age, which is the time where Sauron, was the deceiver, and convinced the different kings of men to fall prey to him, and he was the gift giver, giving the rings of power, and the rings of power forged during the Second Age. And Numenor, which was the great kingdom of men, fell during the Second Age, and Numenorians are the ones who are the precursors to Gondor, and so on and so forth. And so we believe that it's going to be taking place during the fall of Numenor, during the great fall of the kingdom of Numenor, the great last kingdom of men, other than Gondor, of course. And the project, it seems as if it has a lot of funding, being one of the highest budgeted TV shows ever, even more than Game of Thrones, with a $1 billion budget attached to it, not even including the $250 million for the rights for the show, which is insane. So that goes to show you the amount of wealth and the amount of resources that are backing it up. And it is very the crew that are behind it. It seems as if they're pretty experienced. J.A. Bayona, who is the director of Fallen Kingdom, the Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom, and he's directing the first 2 episodes. And then it's Wayne Che-Yip, who did lots of Doctor Who, I believe, and like a couple other different shows and TV shows, and he's worked a lot with Amazon as well. And Charlotte Brandstorm, I believe is how you pronounce her name, and she directed The Witcher, which is, oh my God, so great. And it's one of those kind of mythological kind of touches on it. So I'm looking forward to it. I'm hoping they implement their resources correctly and their time correctly, and they've already promised us 3 seasons, which is just so amazing, with the possibility of a spin-off, which is just awesome. And I just hope that they take Tom Shepay's advice and Tolkien scholars' advice, and follow what Tolkien wanted, and in some ways, even create their own kind of vision of Lord of the Rings. And you have the purists and you have the revisionists. I'm kind of, I guess, I'm more aligned with the purists, not gonna lie. I'm on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the revisionists who want to change everything or whatever, and purists stick to the script, stick to what Tolkien wrote, right? I would have to say I'm like a 4-3, right? But they can put their own little twang in there, if you would, and I'm perfectly content. They just need to get the basic things correct. They need to get the basic things correct, and that's what's truly important about it. And it's fascinating. I don't know, they're working in several different spots throughout all of New Zealand, which is awesome. You know, it's the home of Lord of the Rings. So I'm much looking forward to that and that project, right? So as for the second one, which was just announced like a day or two ago, okay, Lord of the Rings is coming with a new movie called Lord of the Rings: The War of the Rohirrim. And the Rohirrim are obviously the you know the military, if you would, of the of Rohan, the great king, one of the great kingdoms of men. If you remember from the movies, Theoden was the king of Rohan. And so it begins, as he said famously. And during the Battle of Helm's Deep. And the War of Rohirrim will be following through the life of Helm Hammerhand, which was a great warrior and great king, and he was called Helm Hammerhand because he used to literally just use his hands in melee combat, and like one punch would basically kill someone, so that's what he was called. Hammer, ding, hand. So yeah, it's pretty awesome. And they're going to be following that story, and it's about 250 years before the events of Lord of the Rings, preceding, like kind of like a prequel almost. But here's the interesting part, in my opinion. It melds not only Lord of the Rings, which is a particular series and piece of art, piece of entertainment that I love, but it also is going to be an anime, right? Which I love anime. I haven't been keeping up with a lot of these, different new ones, but, I love the old ones. I love Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood. I love Evangelion, Gurren Lagann, Dragon Ball Z, and Soul Eater, all these great animes. So I will find it interesting how they implement that. And the director of it is Kenji Kameyama, I believe is how you pronounce his name. And he did Ghost in the Shell. He did several other ones. He also did work on like Kiki's Delivery Service or something like that. And several other, major anime projects. And it's being worked on by New Line Cinema, who was the makers of Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit. And also they're having one of the main writers from the Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit coming and consulting on this. And also writing in different parts, helping with the screenplay and different things like that. And her name's Philippa Boydon, I believe is how you pronounce it. And she's a New Zealand writer. And and I'm just so fascinated with how they're going to do this. And, it's New Line Cinema going back at it, and they're saying it's not just like a niche kind of market where they're targeting. They're releasing it as a theatrical release, like a gigantic worldwide release. So I think that's going to be awesome, and I just can't wait for it. It's one of the main ones that I'm really curious about. And that's really all we know past that. We haven't really gotten too many details. We've gotten more details, for instance, on like Amazon's, but we're going to see. We're going to wait. I mean, it was only announced 2 days ago, so in time, guys. We just got to wait a little bit. Okay, now as for the third one, which is actually coming in for me in October. So they had announced that they are coming out with a special edition Lord of the Rings book. Okay, an illustrated edition, which for the first time ever is actually illustrated by the author Tolkien himself. See, all these other Lord of the Rings editions, which there have been many, probably hundreds at this point, have been illustrated by other great artists, right, who interpreted his work and drew and painted, what they believed his interpretation of his work was, right? And granted, there's some great ones. However, never once was there actually any that were illustrated by the author himself, Tolkien, which, he's no Picasso, I'll give you that, but he's no me. I can't draw a stick man straight, right? It looks like he's got a broken back. You see that in an earlier video when I tried to do that. But he is a great artist, tremendous artist, and he was very, very modest about his skills, and he was always, hating on himself kind of thing. He was always very critical of himself with his art, but he was actually really good in his artistic, in his creative achievements with some of his art. And all of his art pieces really, his sketches, his painting, his drawings, his maps that he drew and different things like that, they were always hidden in a big archive, and no one really ever saw them until a big showcase in like 2018, I believe, for his art, and people loved it. People came all around the world to see Tolkien's art, right, and to see like what he thought the creator of Lord of the Rings thought Lord of the Rings was, right? Well, this new book, Lord of the Rings kind of special edition, will include 30, I believe, 30 sketches and paintings and different things like that, most of them that he drew during his lifetime and painted or whatnot throughout his lifetime. And it gives us a snapshot, a unique snapshot into what he thought and was thinking in his head, put onto paper, not through the skills of literature, but in fact, the skills of artistic penmanship, if you will, or the paintbrush or whatever. And yeah, so I'm so stoked for it. I'm really so stoked for it, and I hope it goes well. I really hope it just is absolutely tremendous. I really do. Now as for the next one, and this is more so a trend, really, because this project actually failed, unfortunately. So they had attempted to buy Tolkien's old home in Oxford and make it into a museum. And I had actually donated like $30 or I think it was like almost $40 to that process, and they needed to raise millions of dollars. And several of the big stars from Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit, they threw their support behind it, and unfortunately it did not succeed. But they are taking the money and they're using it to create a Tolkien Literary Center, which is the first, surprisingly, in the world, one of the greatest authors of all time, right? And they're doing it in Oxford, and you're setting up programs to help people who are creative and to help artists and to help people who love literature, and to spur them to do greater things, to innovate even more. And fantasy writers and many more, and I'm fascinated by how they are implementing that, and I don't know, I just really hope that it goes very well, goes very smoothly, and I'm throwing my full support behind them, and I just really want them to do great things with it. Maybe, who knows, we might create the next J.R.R. Tolkien, or we might even create the next George R.R. Martin, or the next Lovecraft, or any of those great fantasy or mythological or science fiction writers and different things like that. So I'm fascinated by how that and the results from it can give us something truly spectacular. Now, as for the fifth thing, and this is one of my favorites, and I love this so much, okay, is something called The Friendship Onion, okay, which has Billy Boyd and Don Monahan, okay, coming back, which if you don't know who those are, they are Merry and Pippin, which are one of the two hobbits from The Lord of the Rings, and they are in their own podcast now. And I must say, I have watched the first 3 episodes already. Love it. They are so genuine, and they're so like their wisdom, kind of, but also mixtured with their just hilarious jokes and different little quirky things that are just so funny, and has a lot of heart. The podcast has a lot of heart, and the meaning behind the name of the podcast, The Friendship Onion, you may be like, what's that? Is basically kind of peeling back the layers of their complex friendship over many years. And while all of the Lord of the Rings cast, in my opinion, were very close, right? Definitely even to this day, Billy and Dom, they're the closest. They're easily the closest, the bestest of friends, and I love to see them working together on their own podcast. It's so special to me, and the different Lord of the Rings trivia questions, and reading the emails and having Elijah Wood come on, which I just love those 2 episodes, because there was 2 parts to it. Oh my gosh, it was so special to me. Seeing them, talk again and just interact. And it's not just all about Lord of the Rings too, although that's a big focus obviously on it. But it's about, just friendship. It's about togetherness, just kind of like, hey, like a sense of kind of community. I don't know. And they would allow different people to come on and do different quizzes and stuff like that. It's amazing. it's amazing. I also like the opening song. It's good, and the opening sequence thingy with the little two onions walking through like Mordor and stuff. It's kind of funny. And yeah, it has a lot of heart, and it's so difficult, to rank these big things going on. And some of the other special mentions that I must add also is the new video game is being developed by Daedalic Entertainment, Lord of the Rings Gollum. Right, I wanted to make it 5 just to make it seamless, but honorable mentions, Lord of the Rings Gollum, love it. And now that I think about it, I probably should have put that one as the instead of the Tolkien's house, right? But Lord of the Rings Gollum, it's basically completely focusing on Gollum, and his adventures through the Middle Earth, but more so specifically like Mordor and Gorgoroth, in different areas like that. So I'm fascinated by where that can take us, and it's going to be coming out, I believe, next year. They delayed it just to fine tune it, which is happening with a lot of video games lately. God of War, Hogwarts Legacy, Deathloop. I can't wait, right? And several other games are doing that too. But I digress on the video games. But yeah, Lord of the Rings Gollum is coming out, and Amazon, they had a Lord of the Rings MMO in the making, and they dropped it. I think because they're trying to mainly focus on the Lord of the Rings TV show that they're working on, the $1 billion project, which is nuts, in my opinion. And also, Lord of the Rings Online, which is a pre-existing MMO, is doing tremendous. Its community still bustling, and they're constantly coming out with updates and different things like that. So it's a good year to be a Tolkien fan. It is. And as I close this out, it's a great time to be a lover of Tolkien's art, his way of creating mythologies, his way of using language in such a way, and putting so much detail. He would take like freaking 2 pages to describe like a tree or something. It was crazy. And because he was also a lover of nature and a lover of the world, a non-industrialized world, or at least not over-industrialized world, I should say. And it's truly important to take a look back at him and to understand him in order to understand those different genres, and to understand really who you are sometimes. I love Tolkien, and it's a great year for that. By the way, sorry it took me a little while to create a video. I have been on the game. Sorry, but I'll be making a video shortly, maybe within the next month, hopefully. I have one that I am waiting for news on, which is of particular importance to me and the community that surrounds me. But anyway, guys, y'all have a great one. Have a healthy day, okay? Have a happy day. And don't forget to subscribe to my channel. It's really appreciated. Click that notification bell to stay up to date on all my most recent content. Stay safe, stay happy, stay healthy. Y'all have a great one, everyone. Bye-bye.